All right, so some people ask me, what do I think of Caleb Plant and Canelo Alvarez negotiations falling in the water? Once again, this was something that I heard of, I've seen in passing. I didn't really investigate into it because when it comes to Canelo Alvarez, the majority of his fans are extremely delusional. So to talk accurate about Canelo Alvarez, you would basically be tussling with a legion of fanboys. There's no logic to anything that they're saying. They just want to coddle and champion somebody, which I pretty much don't too much have a problem with. It's just that don't think you can talk boxing and be a fanboy. It doesn't mix. This is why the majority of Canelo fanboys, they get so offended because they try to talk boxing with fanboy logic and it doesn't work. All right. So when it comes to the negotiation between Caleb Plant and Canelo Alvarez, well, first let me address me saying that I didn't want Caleb Plant to take the fight. Why did I say I didn't want Caleb Plant to take the fight? Because I believed if he took the fight, that would be a signal to me that he is selling his belt, because he's coming off a hand injury again, and he's coming off a horrible performance with Caleb Truax. Now, I know how boxing goes. I know when you take on certain challenges, you fight guys similar to the person that you will fight in the future to get you prepared to take on that kind of fight. Caleb Plant has not had those kind of fights. That's why I shot that down. But a lot of people was like, oh, but you said Caleb Plant will whoop Canelo. Now you don't want to see the fight. Now that you want to see this, that, third. But if people remember, the first time Canelo tried to fight Caleb Plant, I said the same thing. I didn't want him to fight him. Why? Because he's not giving you enough time to train. You coming off one training camp, going to go back into another training camp. It's going to be the result of the Kovalov response. What was Kovalov response? Why did you look like that? How come you wasn't strong? How come I didn't have enough weeks to train? It wasn't enough and I knew it. That's the kind of shit that I would want to avoid. And not only that, it's the kind of shit that Canelo fans want to avoid, because you don't want a victory and then like, oh, well, he only gave him 3 weeks to train. He only gave him 4 weeks to train. You know what I'm saying? As a Canelo fan supporter, I would be tired of that. Let these people get a full training camp. So that's all what I was saying. That's all that it was dealing with. I still stand by Caleb Plant and what I feel about him fighting Canelo. But at the same time, I want you to have a full training camp, and I want you prepared to make that leap. You don't jump from where Caleb Plant is to a Canelo. And most importantly than that, where's the buildup? Where's the earning stage? At what point has Caleb Plant earned a shot? Once again, this is something that you present to majority of Canelo fans, and by their own rules, Caleb Plant hasn't earned a damn thing. Yet it is okay for Canelo Alvarez to fight him. Once again, this is a question that you're not going to get an answer for, because it resides in fanboy land. It doesn't make no logical sense. What's wrong over here at this time is right over there at that time, and that's just not cool, you know? So that's why it's so hard to talk about Canelo Alvarez, because he has such delusional fans. Only 2% is actually real and accurate about Canelo Alvarez. The rest are people who are wrapped up in Latino pride more than boxing. They're more wrapped up in he's Latino, I'm Latino. Okay, both y'all speak Spanish. I don't know what y'all getting at there. Or are you saying he's Mexican, I'm Mexican? Canelo fans are wrapped up in that. They're not really wrapped up in the boxing aspect. It's more like a cultural thing. This is why you can't be accurate with these guys. But anyway, nonetheless, why did it fall apart? Well, of course, you know, the normal protocol to a Canelo fanboy, or whatever you want to call it, is do the usual. Blame Al Heyman and blame PBC. But this is one thing I want to say. Although I can't agree when people bring up the PBC when they're doing stuff that they don't like, you can't help but notice that all you want to do is blame PBC and Al Heyman. Everything cannot be PBC and Al Heyman's fault. Now, I'll give them some fault. We will give them the responsibility where they drop the ball. But what you notice is Everybody hides behind Al Heyman and PBC why something doesn't happen. Everything is always PBC and Al. It's never anybody else. A person with common sense and common knowledge can point and see that. It's not hard to tell, okay? But according to your boy Dan Raphael has been accused of being anti-PBC. Dan Raphael has been accused of being anti-black against certain fighters. Dan Raphael's been accused of all that shit. And yet Dan Raphael can come out and tell you Caleb Plant accepted everything. Okay? It was Canelo's side the reason why the shit fell through. But Caleb Plant agreed to everything. Now keep in mind, this is Dan Raphael. He ain't no fan of PBC. And he ain't no fan of Al Heyman. But yet, when somebody like this can come out and tell you that the reason why it fell through was Canelo, well, that just goes back to what people were telling you about being in negotiations with Canelo. We already accept that you cannot beat him on the scorecards. How much bullshit do we have to accept? People been telling you about what he does in negotiations. But see, I like this comment right here because this person pointed it out. Notice how when it comes to having stuff done and when Canelo wants stuff, it's A side and they need to give into the power of A side. But these same people complained about Floyd Mayweather when he was utilizing his power of A side. That's because at the end of the day, this is how they really think. This is how they think all people think. And let me be the first to tell you, because I know a lot of people are tired of this shit with y'all. All right? Nobody gives a fuck if you are Latino. What you're saying is, do you know when you say shit like this? Do you know what you're accurately saying? Somebody is hating on me because I speak Spanish. Do you know how stupid that sounds? Do you know how dumb that sounds? Because he's Latino. Because he speaks a different language, somebody don't want you. So if you want to be accurate in what you're saying, you need to change your vocabulary. Because y'all keep using Latino as it's a race or something. It's for the people who speak the Latin dialect. Jesus Christ. But nonetheless, when you see them write stuff like this, and if this is how they feel, pay close attention. Because if they feel like you're doing this, what do you think they do to you? They openly let you know, this is how we judge you. We judge you based off of your race, your color, your country. That's how they operate. This is why they accuse people of talking about boxing for disliking somebody because they speak Spanish. My bad, because they're Latino. They think nobody can speak anything accurate about Canelo if they're not Latino. And when they are Latino, they even attack them. Even when you got Latinos to say the same thing as everybody else about Canelo, you guys attack them. And most importantly, whenever you say something about Canelo, why does that warrant, and everybody noticed this about Canelo's fan base, how come every time you say something about Canelo, why does that always warrant racism? Because they can't logically speak boxing with you. It's their last result. It's all that they're left with. It's all that they have. Because if they was to talk logical with you, they would have to admit that you're accurately correct about things that have been going on. Okay? And most importantly, for all those that feel like that, if you had a problem with Canelo Alvarez going through PBC and Al Heyman to become undisputed, if you believe he is being blocked because he speaks Spanish, my bad, because he's Latino, then guess what? You guys had ample opportunity for Canelo Alvarez to become undisputed while he did not have to deal with a Al Heyman or a PBC. But yet when it was suggested that he fight a Andrade who had a belt, who could have made him undisputed, it was Demetrius Andrade hasn't fought anybody and he does not deserve a shot, regardless of the fact that he was a champion and he held the last belt that Canelo needed. So since you wasn't worried about it then, take that same energy that you had then and apply it now and go kick rocks into the sunset. Because when people wanted to see that fight, you didn't want to see it. When people wanted Undisputed, you didn't want to see it. When people wanted you to fight somebody like that, you didn't want to fight them. So now that you have to go through Al Heyman to do it, you're going to cry when you had an opportunity to do it outside of having to fuck with PBC and Al Heyman all together. The only thing Canelo had to do was fight Demetrius Andrade to do it. And neither him, his team, or you fanboys wanted that. So how can you complain now? You should have took the opportunity when it was presented, but you were too busy worrying about trying to protect somebody that you guys missed the opportunity for Undisputed. And now that you're fin to luck out again, you are complaining when all it took was for you guys to fight a champion so he can become undisputed. But you didn't like the idea of that because he didn't earn a shot. Regardless of the fact that Caleb Plant doesn't have a better resume or worse resume than Demetrius Andrade. But yet, it's okay to fight. But yet, they'll tell you that's because he has a belt. But Demetrius Andrade at one time had a belt, which he could have became undisputed, and you were not interested. All those is facts. No amount of crying in the comments section will change the fact that everything I said is correct. Okay? No amount of shit talking, racial slurs, there ain't nothing you can do. This is why they result to that, because if you talk logically, you shut them down and they are embarrassed. They are the kids in the realm of talking about boxing. Okay? They're kids that can't sit at the adult table. And that's truly why you get that kind of response. But this is nothing shocking with Canelo. You know, we have learned to accept this over time. But Canelo got a good enough record. Canelo can retire right now. You know what I'm saying? Canelo's good. Canelo fan base is so strong, he can do all kind of wrong and fucked up shit. He's still going to be good. You know what I'm saying? So if that's the case, then why do people even care? You know what I'm saying? Because Canelo can't do no wrong. So what does it matter if he's undisputed or not? He's still the greatest thing since sliced bread in your eyes. He's still better than this person in your eyes. He's still the king in your eyes. So you shouldn't care what other people think, or if they don't put him up as high as you do. You put him up there. All right? So you continue ball worshiping and all that stuff, and nobody's going to bother you. You know what I'm saying? Canelo's fine. This is why at the eye of the time I'm not interested in Canelo fights. Because at the end of the day, I said something that none of y'all can deny. Canelo doesn't have a dancing partner. He can rack up all the names in the world. But Canelo does not have he has a legacy-defining loss. But he does not have a legacy-defining win. Even with all those people on his name. And that's something that they're going to have to figure out, because at this point, it looks like you have to create somebody for Canelo. Because Tony Bellew said something very correct. Canelo's out here legging heavyweight, so where do you go from here? Where do you go from here? See, they painted themselves into a circle. Canelo Alvarez, there's nobody out there that's going to elevate him, that can take him to... Charlo can't do it. Who out there can do it? Who's out there for Canelo? It's almost absolutely nobody. But like I said, Canelo's good. You know what I'm saying? He go ahead and define his legacy. But when it comes to that, like always, Canelo had some outrageous requests and they couldn't get down with it, and the fight fell through. Therefore, blame PBC. It's not Canelo Alvarez's fault. We all know how this story goes. I'm out.